March 13th, 1964, Queens, New York, 3:15 in the morning. A 28-year-old woman named Kitty Genovese is walking home from work, 2 minutes from her front door. A man is waiting in the dark. He attacks her on the street. She screams. She fights. She calls out loud enough to wake the entire block. A light flicks on above her. A man shouts from his window. Her attacker walks away. Kitty Genovese tries to reach her door. He comes back. He finds her in the vestibule of a nearby building and finishes what he started. 2 weeks later, the New York Times runs a story that changes psychology forever. 38 witnesses, it says. 38 people watched from their windows for more than half an hour, and not one of them called the police. 38. That number travels around the world. It lands on the breakfast table of two psychologists named Darley and Bibb. They read it over coffee. By the time they finish, they have the outline of one of the most famous experiments in the history of human behavior. What they found explains something happening inside you every single week. But here's what nobody ever tells you. The story that started it all never happened. First, what Darley and Latané actually found. Because the experiment was real. The effect is real. And it is running inside your brain right now, whether you felt it or not. 1968, they bring college students into a room one at a time. Tell them to wait. Then they pump smoke under the door. Not a lot, just enough to notice. Just enough for your skin to prickle. Just enough for your brain to ask, something might be wrong here. When the student is alone, they report the smoke within 2 minutes, almost every time. No crowd to read, no social signal to follow. So they act. Then Darley and Latané add 2 actors to the room, paid to sit there, glance at the smoke, and do absolutely nothing. The real student watches them. The actors look up, look at each other, go back to their paperwork. 75% of the time, the real student does nothing. They sit in a room filling with smoke. Their lungs are processing it, their eyes are registering it, and somewhere in their brain, a decision gets made that they never consciously chose. Nobody else looks worried, so there's probably nothing to worry about. The smoke was real. The smell was real. The only thing that wasn't real was the reason nobody spoke. Then they run it again with something harder to ignore. A student sits in a cubicle, hears a voice over an intercom, a fellow student describing symptoms that keep getting worse, shaking, difficulty breathing, then the sound of someone falling. Alone, 85% of students get up and find help. When they believe 4 other people are also listening, 31%. Same emergency, same sounds, same person in distress. The only thing that changed was the number of people who knew. Darley and Latané called it the diffusion of responsibility. In a crowd, the obligation to act gets split between every person present. A responsibility that belongs to everyone belongs in practice to no one. You look around, nobody's moving, so you read their stillness like a signal. Everything is fine. This is not mine to solve. They gave it a second name, pluralistic ignorance. Everyone privately suspects something is wrong. Nobody says so, and each person's silence convinces everyone else they were right to stay quiet. The crowd produces a consensus that none of its members actually hold. This is real, documented, replicated for 50 years. But here's what it was built on. In 2007, a researcher named Rachel Manning went back to the original case. She pulled the actual police records. She checked every source. There were not 38 witnesses. That number came from a casual conversation with a detective who later admitted he had no idea where it came from. No list, no count, no verified record anywhere. 38 silent witnesses was a number printed in a newspaper and repeated until it hardened into fact. Manning went to the actual case files. The attack happened in 2 stages, in locations not visible from most of the surrounding apartments. Most people who heard anything described a domestic argument, not a murder. At least one person did call the police. But there was one detail the Times had left out entirely. A woman named Sophia Farrar heard the second attack. She ran downstairs, alone, in the dark, without knowing whether the attacker was still there. She found Kitty Genovese dying in the vestibule. She held her. She stayed. She did not leave her alone. Sophia Farrar's name never appeared in the original story. 38 silent witnesses made a better headline than one woman who ran toward danger. So for half a century, that was the story psychology was built on. Cited in research papers, printed in textbooks, taught in lecture halls all over the world. The story that defined how we understood human behavior in a crisis. built on a number nobody could verify, published over the one person who destroyed it. Now here's the part almost nobody knows. In 2019, a researcher named Richard Philpott did something no one had done before. He obtained real CCTV footage of violent incidents from the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and South Africa. Not staged experiments, not actors in a controlled lab. Real emergencies, real streets, real strangers who had no idea they were being recorded. He watched 219 incidents. In 90% of them, at least one bystander intervened. 9 out of 10. Not students trying to impress a researcher. Not people who had read about the bystander effect in a textbook. People in shopping centers and on street corners and in parking lots with every reason to keep walking. Most of them didn't keep walking. And here's the part that breaks the original theory completely. The more bystanders present, the more likely someone was to help. Not less, more. The crowd didn't produce paralysis. The crowd produced action. Philpott published this in the American Psychologist. It passed almost without notice. The 38 silent witnesses are still the first thing taught in psychology courses around the world. But the data says something different. We are not the people who watched from the windows. We never were. Here's why this still happens to you every week without you noticing. Think about the last time you walked past someone who needed help and kept walking. Not because you didn't care, but because you looked at the people around you, found them moving normally, and something in your body made a decision for you. Nobody else is stopping, so I won't stop. Your brain did exactly what it was built for. For almost all of human history, you lived in a group of 30 people. You knew every face. If everyone around you was calm, the threat wasn't real. The social signal was reliable. Reading the crowd wasn't the flaw, it kept you alive. But your brain is still running that same software. In a city of millions, surrounded by strangers, it cannot tell the difference between there is no danger and nobody is willing to say there is danger. It just reads the crowd, finds it still, and stands down. The person walking past you isn't calm because everything is fine. They're calm because they're reading you, and you're reading them. And the crowd becomes a mirror, every person in it waiting for someone else to be the first to look away. Your nervous system isn't broken, it's just ancient. It was built for a world where the crowd always knew each other. It was never designed for this one. John Darley spent the rest of his career studying not why people fail to act, but what makes people act. What he found fits in one sentence. The single most reliable predictor of whether someone intervenes is whether they have already decided that intervention is their responsibility. Not their ability, not their courage, not the size of the crowd, their sense of responsibility. The people who move aren't braver than the people who don't. They've simply already answered the question that everyone else is still asking in the moment. Is this mine to solve? Kitty Genovese died in a vestibule in Queens in 1964. The story told about her death was wrong in almost every detail. The number was invented. The headline buried the person who should have led every version of this story. That person was Sophia Farrar. She didn't wait to see if someone else would go first. She didn't look around for a social signal. She opened the door into the dark before she knew what was on the other side. She had already answered the question. That decision doesn't require bravery. It doesn't require being different from everyone else. It just requires having already made it. The data says most of us do, when it actually counts. We just forgot, somewhere between the headline and the lecture hall, that we already knew how this story ends.